April 13, 1919, across the Punjab region, thousands of families, farmers, and merchants are making their way into Amritsar. They're gathering to celebrate Baisakhi, the annual spring harvest festival. The mood in India, however, is deeply tense. Over 1 million Indian soldiers had just fought for the British Empire in World War I, with the expectation that their massive sacrifice would finally earn them a degree of political autonomy. Instead, the British government passed the Rowlatt Act. This law allowed colonial authorities to arrest any Indian citizen without a warrant, lock them up without a trial, and hold them entirely without evidence. When widespread protests erupted against the law, Brigadier General Reginald Dyer took command of Amritsar. He immediately issued a strict ban on all public gatherings, but that order was barely circulated. The thousands of rural festival goers arriving in the city never heard it. Many visitors headed toward Jallianwala Bagh, an irregular 7-acre dirt square, entirely bordered by the back walls of surrounding houses and high brick enclosures. There was only one primary way in or out, a single narrow alleyway, barely wide enough for 3 people to walk shoulder to shoulder. By mid-afternoon, anywhere from 15 to 20,000 unarmed people were packed inside. Men, women, and children, chatting, resting in the sun, completely unaware they were standing in an inescapable dead end under martial law. At roughly 4:30 p.m., the sound of heavy boots echoed down that narrow entry alley. General Dyer marched in with 90 armed troops, Gurkha and Baloch regiments. He brought 2 armored cars equipped with machine guns, but they had to be left behind because the alley was too tight for them to fit. The soldiers marched inside, formed a rigid line, and immediately blocked the only viable exit. The massive crowd was now locked inside the square. Dyer carried no megaphone. He offered no warning to the families sitting in the dirt. He gave the crowd 0 opportunity to peacefully disperse. He simply gave his men the order to fire. Later, under sworn testimony, Dyer admitted his goal was never to disperse the crowd. His stated intention was to produce a moral effect, to strike sheer terror into the population. This single command turned a routine crowd control operation into a calculated display of imperial force. When the first shots rang out, the crowd froze. Many assumed they were hearing festival fireworks. But as people began collapsing into the dust, the confusion broke into absolute mass panic as they realized it was live ammunition. The soldiers didn't fire blindly. Dyer specifically directed his men to aim their Lee Enfield rifles exactly where the crowd was the thickest. They shot at the people desperately clawing their way up the 5-foot brick walls, and at the suffocating crush of bodies trying to squeeze out of the sealed entrance. In the northwest corner of the square sat an old open stone well. With no way to climb the walls and no way past the rifles, dozens of terrified people threw themselves into the dark water to escape the bullets. The troops fired until they were nearly out of ammunition. They discharged 1,650 rounds. The slaughter continued for 10 unbroken minutes. The firing stopped only when the ammunition ran low. In 10 minutes, a festive gathering had been reduced to a mass of dead and wounded, trapped inside a yard that had suddenly fallen silent. Dyer marched his men out the same narrow alley and immediately imposed a strict curfew across the city. Families were forbidden from leaving their homes. The wounded were left to bleed out in the dirt courtyard through the night, with no medical aid. The next morning revealed a staggering physical toll. From that single courtyard well alone, over 120 bodies were recovered. This chart contrasts the official death toll accepted by the British government, 379 people, against the investigation conducted by the Indian National Congress, which estimated over 1,000 casualties. Dyer was eventually investigated and quietly removed from command. He faced no criminal trial. Instead, parts of the British public hailed him as a hero, raising a massive public fund of £26,000 to reward him for his actions. Watching the British state protect and enrich the man who authorized a massacre broke the psychological bond between the empire and its subjects. Reconciliation was simply no longer an option. The news provoked immediate resignations and public condemnation. Rabindranath Tagore, India's first Nobel laureate, wrote to the Viceroy and officially returned his British knighthood, stating he refused to hold a title of honor from an empire that slaughtered innocents. Leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, who had previously spent years advocating for gradual political reform, abandoned that strategy entirely. They pivoted to a demand for absolute, uncompromising independence. For others, the response took a different shape. Udham Singh, who was wounded in the Jallianwala Bagh crowd that day, waited 21 years. In 1940, he walked into a London hall and assassinated Michael O'Dwyer, the colonial official who had endorsed Dyer's massacre. Today, Jallianwala Bagh is a national memorial. The white squares painted on its brick walls still mark the exact spots where British bullets struck. After more than a century, the British Crown has yet to issue an official, formal apology. The physical scars of Jallianwala Bagh stand as a permanent record. In 10 minutes of uninterrupted gunfire, an empire proved it would rely on terror to survive, and a nation realized it had to break free.